Welcome to the wonderful world of Rod Stewart. Tonight, the most famous love life in rock, as told by the women who know.
Rod liked sex, very much.
Forget 29 top 10 singles.
He was always wanting sex.
And 6 number ones.
He talked to my nipples, that's what he liked.
Forget that after 5 decades his career is still going strong.
She had a big man.
Forget the £60 million fortune.
Rather like bagpipes, when you blow it, it gets bigger.
There's one thing that Rod Stewart is best known for, the never-ending supply of identikit girls on his arm.
They're all blondes and they've all got long legs.
I certainly wasn't a clone. I was probably the one that was being cloned.
But it wasn't always thus. Britain's best-loved ladies' man and the world's most famous pretend Scotsman was born in London on the 10th of January 1945. His dad was a Scot, but Rod was not. Our growing Rod loved his train set, his footy, and his guitar. But as little Rod grew into big Rod, he discovered his overwhelming, life-defining passion: girls. So Lady Crazy Rod became a rock and roll musician, the premier bird-pulling profession.
Yeah, none of the girls liked him. He just seemed to have a different guy in every town. I was a little bit jealous.
And he was soon going through bands like he went through women, joining Steam Packet, then the Jeff Beck Group, and then hitting the jackpot in 1969 as frontman of the Faces. Rod was well on the road to becoming the planet's most famous rock and roll fanny magnet. And it wasn't long before he got his first leg up the lady ladder with Rod Girl number 1. Kicking off an endless line of long-legged busty blondes was Rod's first serious girlfriend, blonde model Dee Harrington.
The first night we spent together, he wore my knickers, but he didn't wear my knickers for the whole duration of our relationship. He had a very big sexual appetite. I spent a lot of time having sex. He's a bit of a sort of meet somebody, stick him on a pedestal, ask him to marry him after 3 months. But I kind of didn't feel that I needed to rush around getting married. He was just good fun, bit shy, ordinary person.
But not for long.
Wake up, Maggie, I think I got something to say to you.
Rod soon turned up on Top of the Pops, every inch the rock superstar of his dreams. Overnight, he became an international sex symbol, thanks to mega-hit Maggie May, an autobiographical ode about his first sexual experience with an older, fat lady he bedded in a tent.
But you turned into a lover and mother, what a lover, you wore me out. All you did was...
This testament to 28 seconds of pubescent pleasure went to number 1 on both sides of the Atlantic. Rod had hit on a winning formula, and songs about his women and his rampant sex life were to become the basis of his success for the next 30 years.
The effect of Maggie May on our lives, it was incredible. And then the attention that he got was just total world attention.
Rod had now joined rock royalty, and he and Dee swapped their suburban mock Tudor manor for this ostentatious pile in Windsor.
I mean, we spent 2 years doing that house because the furniture that we'd brought from the other house fitted into a corner of one room.
I'd actually been to his house on a couple of occasions, and it was a classic of its type. I mean, it was a gigantic house. They'd got a table that was as long as this house.
Another feature of their new home was Rod's expansive train set.
Just as soon as we'd moved into the house, the train set started to be built. He would glue it, nail it, sand it, colour it.
It must be enormous. He spends a lot of time on his railway.
But not as much time as he spent on his favourite hobby.
He was always wanting sex. He'd always be undoing my blouse if I was asleep. And he liked me to show my legs and my breasts. We used to just go about the house and the grounds and the fields and the barn and this, having sex.
Ain't that loving you, baby?
And you had quite a lot of time on your hands, so he had more sex.
But Rod couldn't spend all his time at home loving up the missus. He was, after all, a rock star, and it was his rock star duty to put it about.
You know, if you have a relationship with somebody who's in the rock business, you can't start saying to them, you're not allowed to carry on with groupies, because they will if they want to. I felt more threatened by the people that surrounded Rod, like the Tony Toons of this world.
Rod, NME, they still want to do that exclusive on you. Do you still want to do it?
By 1974, Rod had employed a personal publicist to promote and protect his superstar profile.
My idea of Rod Stewart of being a star was his lifestyle. His music was secondary.
Both Tony and Rod knew that having a steady girlfriend and a toy train set wasn't headline-grabbing material. So they turned to Rod's other favourite pastime.
We used the word pump and dump. Rod used to read the Sun, look at page 3, ring me and said he liked that particular page 3 girl. And then I would call her and say, would you like to have dinner with Rod Stewart? And the girl used to say yes. But he didn't necessarily pump them. He used to dump them a lot. Poor Dee used to wake up looking at it. Poor girl, I felt sorry for her.
But we'd often read it together in the newspaper in the morning. I'd go ballistic, and then he'd get on the phone to Tony Toon and say, shout, blame him. It was probably a bit of a charade.
Believe me, Rod Stewart is woman mad. He thinks about family day in and day out.
Coming up, Rod beds yet more girls.
It was just disgusting passion.
And bags of Bond girls.
Rod liked sex, very much.
It was 1974, and Randy Rod Stewart was fast becoming Britain's top rock superstar and super stud. But with a steady girlfriend at home, things could only get messy.
He'd started to live the life that he was reading about himself in the paper. And I hadn't and didn't want to. Our relationship needed to be ended, but he couldn't end it. And even when I would go off, go away, he would clamour me back.
When Dee was off, Rod was clamouring after other girls too, including actress Joanna Lumley and model Jilly Johnson. As his star rating continued to rise, so did his Rod.
No matter where Rod went, there were women. You went on tour, every hotel lobby you went to, there were hordes of them, all blondes, hanging around in the hope of meeting him.
You know, if you were a top model or your record was in the top 10, you were just one of the fuckables, really.
Vicky Hodge was an aristocratic, leggy blonde model and star of erotic films, seen here getting saucy in The Man Who Couldn't Get Enough, when she met Rod on the King's Road.
It was just like an afternoon shag, so it was like good, hard sex, proper sex. Rod's a good lover, and the other thing that I really liked about him is he had masses of hair, so that was good to pull and tug, and it was just disgusting passion.
So how big was his Rod?
Ample. Rather like bagpipes, when you blow it, it gets bigger.
But he couldn't bring himself to end it with Dee.
In his life, if you look at the pattern, he only moves to another woman when it's lined up. You know, he doesn't sort of have large breaks in his life on his own.
Things came to a head when Dee went to see Rod on tour in LA.
Got to the hotel, he was there, mad passionate love, and I had a scratch on the side of my body. And he said, "You've been unfaithful." I said, "No, I haven't." Anyway, stormed out over to Tony Toon's room, came back, got to go out tonight on business.
So she would have to have dinner with me. We drove down Sunset Boulevard.
And I was behind this limousine outside the Troubadour, and I said to Tony, "Oh, it's Rod, let's just pull it up in front." Ran into the Troubadour, and he stood there with Brett Eklund.
All I know is that someone came in to the club, a tall blonde woman, but I didn't know who it was.
And I said, "What the fuck are you doing? And he turned to me and he said, well, it works both ways. And I said, I'm on the next plane. I seized that moment and got my life started going back.
It was a nightmare. And that's the one and only time I've had a tear in my eye over the women of Rod Stewart.
Swedish bombshell Britt Ekland was the next semi-permanent blonde in Rod's life. The ex-wife of Peter Sellers and a Bond girl to boot, she was one of the world's top pulls, and the bagging of Britt would make Rod's lady-loving reputation legendary.
I was introduced to him by Joan Collins. We all went out for dinner, and we instantly locked eyes and spent the whole evening just talking to each other. It was definitely love lust at first sight, yeah.
Britt wasn't 6 foot, blue-eyed blonde, although she was 5'6", blue-eyed blonde. However, she knew everyone. And that's why I think Rod took a shine to her.
He was very charming. He was very boyish, very playful, and he was, you know, cute looking with that fluffy hair and the scarves and the colours.
I got on with Britt very well. No madam with her or anything like that, you know. She was really down to earth.
So, with a beautiful blonde Bond girl pining for him in America and British taxes running at 82%, what could rampant Rod do? He decided to leave old Blighty for good and set up home with Britt in Los Angeles.
I do remember the media going really crazy about Rod and Britt. The two of them together, the combination was, you know, it was combustible.
Rod was getting almost daily coverage when Britt Ekland was on his arm. You know, they'd arrive at airports, they'd be photographed as the new couple.
Sailing, Rod's first release after skipping the pond, was a massive hit, but nothing could compare with the coverage he was enjoying with Britt.
Rod Stewart was getting more publicity with women than he was with faces.
Rod's love life was eclipsing everything, and during a photo shoot for Rolling Stone magazine, the rest of the faces were quite literally pushed out of the frame by rock's golden couple.
So we basically just sort of, you know, that arms around each other. And of course, they choose to put that on the cover, and the band just, I thought they were going to kill me.
Yeah, Roddy Wood got very upset over it. He was furious. That's when the problem started with the faces, the downfall of the faces.
When that tour finished, when I met him, they split.
Now free to concentrate on his solo career, Rod's raunch factor threatened to spiral out of control. Tonight's the Night saw a confident, even cocky Rod singing about deflowering a virgin. Though banned on Top of the Pops for its racy lyrics, it went to #1 in America for 8 whole weeks.
I like Tonight's the Night because I'm on it, but because he sang about, obviously, someone much younger, I refused to let them show my face. He asked me to put the French talking bit on it, and I made up the words and translated them into French as well. I was in all the videos, but it wasn't like I was paid for it.
But the reality of their relationship was not quite as rosy. Britt and Rod may have got themselves a massive mansion in Carrollwood, where Britt educated Rod in Art Nouveau, ladies' makeup and ladies' clothes, but for homesick Rod, there was something missing in paradise.
He wanted English food, so I learned how to make shepherd's pie, and I did excellent Yorkshire puddings.
Britt Ekland said that he'd rather have steak and kidney pie than sex. I mean, I'm not too sure about that, because as far as I'm concerned, he would rather have sex.
Of course, he wasn't more interested in pie, whatever pie it was, than sex. Because a pie could be anything, could be apple pie or, you know, lemon pie, shepherd's pie, kidney pie. I was never good with pastry.
So if Rod was enjoying his pie, it follows he must have been getting great sex.
Rod liked sex very much. but we were not sexually compatible. We were very much in love, and we were very, very affectionate, but we were quite different sexually.
Luckily, Tony Toon was on hand to stop Rod's lady-killing reputation from flagging.
He had his own publicist living in the house, so if we had a quarrel, you suddenly read about it in one of the English papers, and I thought, who would know that? And then afterwards I realized that it was him. I think I was probably very naive, still am to this day.
Britt was pure PR fodder. I knew it, he knew it, his management knew it, his record company, everyone knew it apart from Britt.
He wasn't yet a womanizer. It wasn't until after me that whole womanizing reputation came into his life.
What about you, Rod? Because you've got a great reputation as a womanizer, and we all read the scandal. You were chatting up Susan George, you've got a smacked face for it. Do you get annoyed by this?
True. I have to point out that this time it was absolutely not true. It was one of several totally and utterly fabricated stories about us.
Why is it?
Yes, darling. It's quite true. Now, what she says is very true.
No, it is true.
What she says has made it very clear, hasn't it?
I had stated quite clearly at the beginning of the relationship that I would never accept affairs.
See, Britt was naive, you see. She thought that Rod Stewart was faithful. He wasn't. Rod Stewart's not faithful to anyone. Apart from his bank manager, probably.
He liked me to be on top. He liked to look at me, talk to my breasts. He talked to my nipples, that's what he liked.
Actress and model Carol Mallory embarked on a 2-year liaison with Rod in 1976. She was one of many girls competing for his attention while he was still with Britt.
Rod would see me on and off without Britt's knowledge.
I got to go out with him whilst he was living with Britt Ekland. And I got to go out afterwards and be the other woman all the time. It was brilliant.
He was funny in bed. He made me laugh. He wore like a Sherlock Holmes cap and tam. Yeah, he was funny with the dress up during sex. He liked me in garter belts and all that stuff, corsets. I think he liked white. He was into white corsets.
Well, Carol Mallory, when she had an orgasm, she screamed the house down, and even the maids and the butlers, and everyone Rod employed, woke up.
Oh, he put Britt's boa on once during sex. She had these god-awful fuchsia boas. She had a makeup area that was like out of the circus. Well, of course, I'd go in there and mess around with her makeup when she was away. Rod was well endowed, yes, you could put that on.
I met George, and he said it's interesting that, my girlfriend is now with Rod Stewart. And it was like a bomb just hit me. And I just drove home and sat up all night waiting for him. And asked him about it, and he said, yeah. And that's when everything went blank.
I felt very sorry for her because she didn't know what was going on. But she had controlled him, and you have to look at Rod's character, how he looks for these strong women, sets them up, so he plays the little boy, and then throws them out. He looks for someone to be his mother.
No, I was never a mother figure. Never. I mean, he had a perfectly good mother. He probably thought that he could get away with it. With another woman more dependent on him, he probably would have.
I took all those habits of yours that in the beginning were hard to accept.
Along Came You're in My Heart, and that was one of Rod's nicer, more gentle, tender, loving songs, and I think he did dedicate it to Britt as a sort of peacemaker.
I don't know the title, You're in My Heart, You're in My Mind, which he wrote about me and for me during that period when I was in Sweden, and he played it to me when I got back. And then, of course, when we broke up, he said it was about the Scottish football team. Which, if you listen to the lyric, is a bit odd, but, you know, never mind. People do what they want with their own property. I was very much in love with him, and when it ended the way it did, it was very painful, yeah. I became anorectic, and it was so horrendous that it wasn't even, you know, it wasn't even worth living.
Rod had, you know, gone to spandex. Sorry. And had gone all blonde.
She was becoming the front cover of Vogue, for Christ's sake. Yeah. What more could you ask for a pop star to have bedded than Bibi Buell? PR's dream.
When he called me to ask me out, one of the things he said to me on the phone was, I've broken up with Britt, you've broken up with Todd. We've always liked each other. Why don't we give it a go? And he asked me to come round to the hotel for dinner. And I arrived, and it was a dinner with he and a bunch of journalists. So it was very strange. I think that, you know, Rod had a genuine affection for me. I think that it was more Tony Toon, possibly, in that crowd that saw me as potential press grabber. One of the first photographs of us was me in fishnets and a leather jacket being called Hot Legs.
He recorded Hot Legs when he was with me, and I like to think they were my legs, but I know my lyrics are in there because I used to say, why don't you take me out when Britt's home? Why don't you end it? I said, you're just pussy whipped. He said, pussy whipped, pussy whipped. I'll have to use that in the song.
I love you, honey! He would probably rather me say, yes, he was a tiger. You know, but he was actually, no, he was extremely sensitive and caring.
I thought I'd died and gone to heaven.
I had wonderful, wonderful romantic times. I remember one time he surprised me by having one of our hotel rooms when we arrived, the bed covered in rose petals and champagne and this beautiful, beautiful antique negligee waiting for me to put on. I mean, stuff like that.
There's nothing finer than seeing, you know, 200,000 women screaming for a man on stage to make you proud to go home with them. I don't think I've ever experienced a man more romantic than Rod. He was very, very attentive, very, very playful. He put on my underwear and went running up and down the hotel room corridors. He's a rather big man.
In the case of Marcy Hanson, he kept her in on the Park in London, and Bibi Buell in his house in Ascot.
I had flown into London for Rod's 33rd birthday.
Poor Marcy, I mean, she comes over there thinking she's Rod's girlfriend too, and I was already there living with him in a big house in the country for the Christmas holidays. And he had to get rid of her, so he had, you know, Keith Moon do it.
He had left the party with Elton John, and some Englishman came over to me and just started screaming, yelling, "You dirty American." I mean, ranting and raving and throwing just a hissy fit. And so I basically bowed out and called for my driver to take me back to my hotel.
So she got her marching orders the following day. So it helped me in getting rid of one and enhancing the other.
She was made to look like a bimbo too, one of the girls fighting over Rod. And none of this was true. These were all created scenarios. Rod was just such a womanizer. It was just impossible. I decided I couldn't stand Rod anymore, you know, get away from me, you know, I just didn't like him. And I had a booking for Vogue, and I had to go back to London. When I arrived in London, I was greeted by literally hundreds, I wish I was exaggerating, of photographers and media. And by the afternoon, I was on the cover of every English newspaper. Rod dumps BB, and I think he called me a bimbo or something, and things like that. And it was cruel.
That song really propelled him into the sex god that he seems to become for women.
Do You Think I'm Sexy, I think, was, for me, the watershed, however ironic it was intended to be. I just thought, this is what we doctors call shite, Rod.
Why does she sit in the middle?
She can sit in the middle, of course she can.
I'll sit on the outside, dear.
Can you get in there?
Lana was very beautiful, very intelligent, very amusing, quick-witted, very fiery. Everyone from Jack Nicholson, John Voight, Barbara Streisand, Dinah Ross.
Alana Hamilton was on the A-list of the LA scene. Britt Eklund was on the C list of the LA scene.
No, I don't think you should compare me with Alana Stewart, Hamilton, Collins. Ever. She's someone that came after me. Just another blonde.
He used to call her loudmouth Alana. She really just did not seem to be the kind of woman that Rod usually went for.
When Alana came along and she was my friend, she used to ask me, what did I see in Rod with his nose like that? She was continually putting him down and making fun of me for going out with him. And when she saw his mansion and pool, she changed her mind.
And when you saw him across the crowded room, was it love at first?
No, I thought he was sort of very cocky and sure of himself, and I thought, who does he think he is anyway?
Well, when did it start to phase into a kind of deeper interest?
Well, actually, Tony called me a couple of times, the infamous Mr. Toon.
I've never known Rod Stewart to fall in love with someone like he did with Alana. We had the perfect PR scenario. Because I was thinking of myself.
When they first met, they were in bed all the time. incredible. Every time I went up to the house, you know, where are Rod and Alana? Oh, they're in bed. They rang me one day and said, you know, we're going to get married. Will you call my father and see what he thinks?
When Roddy married Lana, my father said he would like him to marry a nice Scottish girl. But it never happened. Might do, never know.
Your father's got the gun, and there ain't no place to run shotgun with him.
The fact that he didn't marry Brit, but he married Alana, is very strange.
No, I knew why he married her, because she was pregnant. And I'm sure that if I had been pregnant, he would have married me. But I was not prepared to do that, and I told him that.
I don't think there's anything to do with taming him. I just think that maybe getting married and having children, you'd rather spend more time with them than be out in nightclubs or up all night or, you know, waking up hotel rooms or whatever. And I think, as he said, it's a bit of getting older, too.
She hated pop music. She used to sit outside when he was performing on stage. She'd sit backstage or outside, entertaining all her big showbiz friends.
She got on the bus with the band, wasn't happy because the champagne was wrong. She created such a storm that Rod decided to kick her off. And I've got to tell you, I've never in my life seen so many bright faces in the band than when she was kicked off the bus in the middle of this freeway.
Well, I think Alana, you know, she was married to Rod, and I think she thought she could steer him towards films. And I think she tried to steer him into it by, you know, maybe if she could get the management changed to, you know, a movie management instead of rock and roll management.
Alana Stewart took over complete control of the management of the band and the PR, all of us. And that was the end of me.
The womanizing, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, you know, he's never stopped and he never will.
Baby Jane was a huge, huge hit, and I think that Rod wanted to show his fans that he hadn't become boring, that he was still the super stud singer that you know the girls can adore and the lads can look up to. Rod got excited by her after seeing her in a film called Portfolio, which is all about the inside world of modelling, and got a friend to phone her up under the pretext that he was so smitten by her that he wanted to write a song about her. And Kelly actually fell for it.
Alana was devastated by the breakup, absolutely.
I think the fact that Kelly wasn't in the headlines like all the other girls have been, it was because they did have a really genuine relationship going on, and she was very private.
Kelly is from Texas, and she is kind of a down-home girl, even though she was a supermodel at that time. I don't think Kelly ever had the desire to be in a Rolls Royce every day or sipping champagne. I think Kelly would be happier in blue jeans than on the back of a horse.
He was very well behaved in Mexico. I can vouch for him.
I was glad you got to go, because I know he loves soccer so much. But I never told him not to go.
Tell you
he played the field quite blatantly in front of her.
Kelly was on a modelling tour in Israel or somewhere like that, and he introduced me to Kelly. And I thought, that's odd, this one's got dark hair, you know. And then when they'd left, you know, one of the band members said, oh, no, that's Kelly LeBrock.
He was playing around when Kelly was carrying Ruby.
How do you feel when you're watching them?
I used to work at the London Ferrari Centre, and one day I'm sitting there behind my desk, and here walks in the god of my life. There was like electricity. I mean, it was difficult to keep our hands off each other. In a party situation, we'd sneak off somewhere, and he'll have picked a place earlier where we could take part in a little bit of lovemaking in private. We were in the country at a restaurant with his mate Ricky, and we went outside just to have a little cuddle, and one kiss led to another, and we made love on the back of his Lamborghini, which was incredibly sexy. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. I mean, lots of men are very, very selfish in bed, and he's not a selfish man in the slightest, so.
The thing that I really appreciate about him now is that, in looking back, he was a man who really appreciated women. There are a lot of men that can womanize, but they don't like women. They really, underneath, are quite mean to them and degrading and controlling. But Rod wasn't like that. Rod really appreciated a woman.
He never made me feel like I wasn't the only one. He always made me feel like I was the only one. But in the back of my mind, I knew that that couldn't that's just one dream too far.
I can remember the night that he met Rachel, and kind of he was on a date with me. I could see that he was flirtatious with her. And I could see she was responding, yeah. I thought it was, you know, a little not nice, you know, because I think he could have waited till I wasn't there. And then she came back to the house. That was enough for me. I was like, I won't even go there.
I opened the paper, and the headline is Rod to Wed. And he'd been away for about a month at that time. So I called his mate, Ricky, and I said, Ricky, is this a publicity stunt for the release of the album, the single? He paused, because he knew that Rod wasn't going to see me again. And so it was left in his lap to bear me the bad news. And he said, I'm really sorry, Anne-Marie, but yes, it is true. And I was shocked. Really shocked. I can remember going out. It still upsets me, actually. Can we cut for a minute?
What do you expect? I mean, she was 20 years old when they got married.
Just said to him, hang on a minute. You know, you haven't known her very long. He said, I know what I want. And that was the wedding, and that was just friends and relatives. She is lovable. There's no getting away from it.
Of course, she was very young at the time. She was 21, he was 45 when they got married. So the age gap was absolutely huge.
I just have a feeling that men who are with women who are constantly that much younger than they are probably afraid of serious, normal discussions. Or maybe they just don't like old flesh, who knows?
He suddenly returns to the front pages, and he's not been off them for his women and his sex life since.
I think he probably was showing off. As a 45-year-old man, showing off this wonderful 21-year-old bride.
And appreciate it.
I think it was the happiest time of Rod's life.
Rachel definitely tamed Rod. He just oozed love with her. The first bit was when the driver sets off, get your tits out. I'd rather not say the rest. I feel a bit embarrassed. Rod, Rachel and his friend and his wife used to have farting competitions in the car to see who could do the loudest or the worst smelling even, you know. Rod used to win most of the time, I think.
How anybody could leave him, I have no idea.
Well, what do you expect? I mean, she was 20 years old when they got married.
She said that she really thought she'd married too young and that she'd got bored with Rod's musician friends sitting around her. Of course, it would be mostly middle-aged men.
She, in the end, needed to get away from the life and become her own person and not just be living in his Rod Stewart world.
I wasn't shocked that they'd split up. I was sad. But equally, I suppose I wasn't surprised, not because of any indication I got from them as individuals, but more the nature of the work, the touring, the times apart, the frenetic highs and lows.
I was very worried about Roddy, because I don't think I've ever seen him so upset about anything in all my life, you know.
A friend of hers asked her to go over to Rod and ask for his autograph, and Penny strode over, and Penny's hard to miss.
Rod is a Capricorn. He's down to earth. He's very basic, right? And I think he needs someone that's very basic too. Perhaps that's why, you know, he gets on with Penny. She's an Essex girl, isn't she?
Half his age now, though, you see. But there's nothing wrong in that. Suits him. Look how stupid he'd look with a 50-year-old woman.
I had the Brazilian wax.
So everything off, absolutely everything off.
Yes.
Brilliant, I love that look. I really do love that look.
Do
you? Because we were talking about this. So you do like it?
I do, yeah. My girlfriend... Oh,
she doesn't.
Penny saying Rod can't do it twice a day. There are radio phone-ins discussing whether a man in his late 50s should be able to do it 20 times a night or not.
That could not be a quote from her. It just couldn't be.
The stories that have run through the press from beginning to end of the Rachel-Penny feud is absolutely 100% genuine. They despise each other.
I think Rachel realised she's made a huge mistake. I mean, if you become the ex-Mrs. Rod Stewart, you mean a lot less than if you are the current Mrs. Rod Stewart. And if she divorces Rod, then he could marry Penny, and Penny will become the current Mrs. Rod Stewart, which is something I probably would think she wouldn't like very much.
If Roddy's going to marry, he'll marry within a year. If it goes on any longer, he's not going to marry.
Never in my life. He'll never be married to Penny in my life. He's more interested in his train set.
Maybe if he changed and got someone a bit older, with dark hair, not such long legs, not so thin, he might find love there. One never knows.
Oh, God, I'd be one of those women with the turkey and the kids on Christmas Day.
That was the house with the mba.
If you look at his track record, it looks like he wants the same woman.
Who is that woman?
Probably a copy of me.
Friend.
What do you think he was thinking? Yeah.
Rod?
Yeah.
He had a bigger bank account, but you have a bigger dick.
Yeah.
Okay?
I'm not ashamed that I was one of Rod's blondes. You know, I'm really not.
Rod just was not my destiny. You know, we all have different roads to hoe.
He's got sex appeal like dripping everywhere.
Lord, let him know you. Let him feel you.
All I know is that he's a dirty old fucking man. All I know is. However, I've got to tell you, that man is magic.
See you again